I am being watched. Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 3, Episode 17. It's called Route Path. So spoilers for the episode, and as the title suggests, this one largely follows Route. At first it felt like it was just going to be Route, but of course, the rest of the team kind of come into it when Route ends up in New York. We kind of get like a little mini adventure of Route on her own at the start, just kind of giving us an example of what the machine's making her do, like here or there. Like this idea that she breaks this prisoner off a prison bus, makes them dress up and pretend to be someone else so they'll accept a package, and kind of achieves a little mini mission without really knowing what the full details are. And there's a lot of just fun stuff with her knowing things but not having answers to any of the guy's questions, and just giving him a little bit of help for his future prison life and stuff like that. It's all very fun to watch Root just be completely in control, but also not be murderous as well, because that's something that the machine doesn't want her to do. And that her past and the idea that she could redeem for her past is certainly a subject that comes up over the course of this episode. It really starts to lay it on thick and kind of develops the Root and Finch relationship quite a bit by the end. So I should also mention before I get into anything else is that they do some more fun playing around with the opening sequence where it starts off normal, you're being watched, blah, 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 but then every so often it starts to change to Root's voice instead of Finch's, and then we go down and follow Root instead this episode. And we only interact with the other characters in the show when they happen to show up when Root is with her next subject. And she's like, wait, don't you trust me, Harold? And of course, they reveal that they've actually got this guy's number as well. This janitor that she's been sent to enlist for something is also for the team. So the machine's got everyone working on the same person right now, but for different reasons. And there's a lot of lore stuff this episode, a lot of big stuff going down with Decima and Project Samaritan, their version of the machine, the new version that they can control and do all sorts of horrible things with. And I mean, Ray even really makes it clear this episode that if that thing actually comes online, if this thing exists and is working, then the first four people it's going to go after are Team Machine. And there's nothing we can do to stop it at that point. We have to stop them from getting to this. And they've already got the software kind of figured out. But the whole plot of this episode is about them trying to get to this fancy new computer chip that's the first thing that's been designed that can actually run this new version of the machine, because no other computer chip's fast enough. So that's what their goal is. That's what the MacGuffin is of the episode. But the real heart of the episode is this idea of, will Root decide to save that or save the human being that she's been tasked to look after? And it obviously ties it back to her own past as well. When this guy tells this horrible story of a shooter coming into his business and killing his partners, leaving him for dead and killing some other people, Root immediately starts to react to that, and you can kind of quickly piece together that she was the person who did this, or at the very least is the one who sent someone in to do it. And it's kind of her reckoning with her own past. And I always talk about the characters redeeming themselves on this show. So much of this show is them making up for things that they should make up for, or at the very least they themselves think they should make up for. And this is, Root in a lot of ways has done some of the worst things with her time before she got to the machine. And it all kind of boils down in this episode to one particular scene that was phenomenal, both in performances from both Amy Acker and Emerson who were acting here, but just this scene between Root and Finch where they kind of get into the nitty gritty, and she admits to Finch what she did to this guy's friends a few years ago, but also confronts Finch about kind of this ideology battle that kind of is going on in her head right now. See, the janitor that she's looking after, this guy named Cyrus, is a very kind of zen dude. It seems like ever since his friends were killed, he decided to live this quiet life as a janitor. He didn't want to be rich anymore. He wanted to just sort of accept life as it came. But she, feeling guilty about what she did to him, and that there is no grand plan from like the great beyond that he seems to believe, at the very least until the machine existed anyway, she kind of sees that as being her god, and that's what she's following now. But for a long time she didn't believe in that. She thought the universe was cold, it was cruel, it was random, it wasn't looking out for anyone. And I don't think anything necessarily is there to disagree with that. But the conversation gets very interesting when she says a line where she asks Finch, how did you break the machine to make it care about human beings? Like, what did you do to it? You must have done something to hurt it, to manipulate it into actually caring about the human beings in the world. And of course, Finch responds with, that wasn't me like torturing the machine or doing something to break it. That was how it managed to work. By teaching the machine to care about humans, it meant that it could protect the humans. It would start to care about them and therefore actually want to help. And Finch even goes a little bit on the nose here and says, and if you let me, I'd like to try and maybe teach you that too. Because this entire episode's about her not really caring about the human beings she's interacting with. Yes, the machine's keeping her on a leash and making sure she doesn't kill anyone, but it's this idea that she'll use them for the asset that they are, that the machines told them, or told her that they need them for. But once they've done their task, if it becomes down to succeeding in her mission or looking after the human being that she's kind of taking care of, she won't probably pick the human because she doesn't really like human beings that much. And this episode's all about making that choice. And ultimately, of course, to give you a big satisfying ending to the story, she does make the human choice towards the end, where she hears the gunshots down the hallway and she chooses to prioritize saving the human being instead of stopping Decima from getting the computer chip. That's just satisfying storytelling, honestly. It was hard not to, one, get hyped for her making that choice, and the fact that she even gets shot because she decides to walk across this room where the gunfight's happening, knowing that this man that she's there to protect is scared of guns. He said that earlier on, and she had to fight her way through some scenes she made some tear gas in the frying pan, and she basically did some inventive things so that she wouldn't have to actually start shooting people, because this guy is scared of guns. And it makes sense he's scared of guns because he survived a mass shooting. That's effectively what happened to him. It makes sense that he is terrified of these things. So that all made sense to me and added up. But to go back to that scene with Root and Finch, the performances there were so good, and it really felt like this was the first time we were seeing Root emotionally break down a little bit. Like, you can tell that the guilt of what she did to this guy is getting to her, and that she's feeling frustrated and maybe questioning her role in things a little bit, because her voice is breaking. She sounds a little bit teary-eyed as she's arguing with Finch. And it doesn't feel like Finch has said something to upset her or anything like that. It feels like the weight of what's happening is here. And she even asks Finch, I think, towards the end of the episode, this wasn't a coincidence, was it? The machine wanted me to go through this and meet this man and learn something from it. And Finch just says, oh, you'd have to ask the machine, which is a good response to that, because yeah, clearly he's not colluding with the machine to teach her lessons, even though I think he probably agrees ethically with the machine about what the machine's trying to teach her. But there was never a question in my mind, honestly. If anything, the fact that she's even saying that shows that she's just sort of mentally processing it, because there wasn't a doubt in my mind that the machine did this intentionally. This machine has repeatedly given people missions or put them into situations that will help them grow, that will help them get over something in their past. And it feels like the machine is trying to pass on to Root what Finch gave the machine, was the ability to care about the human beings in the world. Something that Decima is not going to do for Samarin, the new machine. So I think all of this was extremely satisfying, because anything that taps into the morality of the machine and the fact that it's more of a life form and has a sense of right and wrong and does actually care about people, but also just the fact that we're getting to develop Root a bit further, and at the very least it feels like in some small way she might actually deep down want to redeem. And the idea that the machine thinks she has to make some peace with these things that she's done in her past is probably enough to convince her that she should consider it, that she should think about it, and that she's being judged by her God, right? Because she keeps calling her the machine God. She keeps saying she is God. That's what she keeps saying. And at least to her, I think that's somewhat true. It also means that she gets to phrase some things in some really cool ways. Like if Samaritan gets turned on, we're going to see what it's like if two gods go to war, which I thought was a really cool line, actually. So, yeah, it just ties back in again to this idea that she doesn't trust in human beings because of what happened to her friend when she was a kid, and it started her down this path. And the idea that she found something to believe in a machine, because a machine ultimately isn't as cruel or as random as a human being can be. In theory, it's cold and it's calculated and it does things that you can predict. But I think the irony here is that this machine isn't that. This machine is something that feels and cares, arguably better than a lot of humans do, to be honest. Maybe in many ways that's why it's working for her, is because it's the perfect human being in many ways, just without the body and all that stuff. Also, she fixes her ear this episode. She goes to a doctor. I didn't quite catch exactly what they were doing here, but earlier in the episode, I really liked this. I've been enjoying whenever this pops up, that Decima, or a group that understands what the machine is, will try and do things to block its effectiveness so that they can get away with something. And in this case, it was blocking the connection the machine has to root, presumably with some sort of cell phone blocker or something like that. And she gets Finch to do a little thing on what looked like a hearing aid or something like that, but then she gets the doctor to put it inside her, inside her head, basically, next to her ear. And I was thinking as he was putting it in that this was going to be like she wouldn't need like an external earpiece anymore. It would just be something that taps right into her ear, the ear she's deaf in, and she would hear just the machine through that. She would literally have the voice of God in her head. It seemed like she still needed the earpiece though, so I think it was just like a way to block the block. It was a way so that they couldn't interrupt it, presumably because it's some kind of analog. I'm sure someone can explain exactly the science, the theory behind whatever this device is, but the effect of it was that later on, when Decima tried to block her connection to the machine, it does not work, and she still walks through the lobby of the building, guns blazing, like there's no tomorrow. So that's an important detail to mention in terms of like progression this episode. But I really did love getting some focus on Root, because she has been missing, of course, for several. We got a little glimpse of her at the end of last episode, but she's been missing for a few episodes. So it was nice that when she came back, it wasn't just that she came back, it was a full-on, no, this is a Root-focused episode, arguably with more development for her than we've had in a little bit of time. And it reminded me a lot of actually that plane episode with Reese, because Reese had been kind of like not missing, but he'd played a very minor role in like 3 or 4 episodes leading up to that because of the fallout after Carter's death. And then we got this great episode focusing on him and giving him like his sense of purpose back. This felt like, Root's been missing for a little while, so now we get to spend some quality time developing her story and the way she sees the world. Like I said, that like when she was debating with Finch about it wasn't even debating with Finch, she was just kind of like talking to Finch about her ideological difference with the janitor, and talking about how he believes in a plan and all this, and how she can't just see any hope like that in humanity, but she does in the machine. And that's interesting. And it makes me wonder, like, in the ways this machine is helping people is going far and beyond just warning when something bad is going to happen. It's actually giving people like a sense of therapy in a lot of ways, and helping them get through their issues. And she did say the machine is worried about Finch, and Finch thus far has not allowed the machine to communicate with them directly. And it feels like, if this goes both ways, right, where Finch criticizes Root for not appreciating humans, I think there's the flip of that is that Finch is holding the machine at arm's length, and that's something that he's ultimately going to have to move on from. And I think it's going to be a really big moment in the show when Finch decides to talk directly to the machine, because I don't think there's anything stopping the machine from talking to him other than just he doesn't want to do it, and the machine's respecting that. Root said that in a previous episode. So I expect that to be a big moment to come, especially since he's inching towards it, because at the end of this episode, he basically says to Root, hey, you know what, maybe it's time that he started trusting Root a little bit. Clearly the machine trusts her, and she's doing stuff that's important, and while there's differences, they both agree that Samaritan coming online is bad for everyone, so maybe there should be a little bit more collaboration between them. So it sounds like Finch is willing to work with Root, and Root is like, yeah, I'm going off to here next, and blah, blah, blah. There's some comedy with Fusco. Yeah, I probably shouldn't gloss over the little joke that for one of her jobs for the machine, she apparently got legitimate FBI credentials and walks into the police station with a warrant, which was a funny line when Fusco said, you're not leaving with this guy without a big fat FBI warrant, and she just whips it out and slaps it on his chest and says, there you go. And he just doesn't know what to do or say, and that's pretty funny to me. I should also mention as well that Root doesn't tell the janitor what she did in his past. And she says she wanted to, but she realized that she'd be doing it for her to get it off her conscience. And all this would do, really, for him is to sort of open those old wounds when he has this sort of belief in his in the world, in his life, and it's kind of working for him, and she doesn't want to ruin it. And it's really, and I think she's right in a way. I do think this would be more about her finding, because it'd be one thing if he was still like having nightmares about that night and he was still obsessed with it and he couldn't move on with his life because he had no sense of closure. No, he'd found a way to move on, and she would just be dragging him back into thinking about it, and it would be this big unnecessary drama, especially since we the audience already got to see her completely go against her normal, and pardon my word here, her normal programming, to go and save him instead of finish the mission. And it felt like a big character moment for her to do that. So we know the weight of that, even if he doesn't completely get it, but she's still this savior to him. And the fact that she goes out of her way to do it without guns, to make him feel comfortable, to make him feel like he's being taken care of, I think there was a lot of touching elements to that. So yeah, I mean, there's very little to critique here as far as the main story and route goes. The comedy with Fusco is a good bit of fun. And I love that Fusco still doesn't know why she knows all these things. She keeps saying things like, your fire alarm is going to stop working at 2 a.m. Here's a battery. And he doesn't know about the machine. He just thinks she's a psychic or something. And that's kind of funny. It's actually really funny. So... yeah. As far as the rest of the team go this episode, Reese keeps popping up for some of the action scenes and like is kind of tracking and helping out and whatnot. There's some fun stuff early on where Root's with the janitor in his apartment and Shaw's outside and she drops her like a breakfast bar or something and says, hey, you didn't have breakfast today. And Shaw's like, hey, I'm the one that convinced them to let you out of the cage, so don't make me look bad. Also, it seems like we're not going to like that. I kind of commented like I don't know, like 6 episodes ago now. The flirting where Root was kind of flirting with Shaw, and I thought it was just like a one-time thing, but it was in this episode too. She does it a couple times, so I'm not mad at this being a running thing, especially with Shaw giving her the eyes of death when she does it. Like she's just not amused by it. Is pretty funny, honestly. So. Yeah, that said though, we do have to talk about Shaw a little bit for this episode, because I will say if there's one thing I'm going to critique in the writing of this episode, it's probably just how transparent we need a reason for Shaw to not be around for the main plot all episode, because we if Shaw's around and we don't really need Root to go and make this choice because there would be enough people there to deal with it. So Shaw has to be taken off the table. So she's given kind of like a borderline comedy subplot where Vigilance, the useless group that never achieve anything, show up, right? They also want this guy. But of course, they're never important, right? They're always just... like, if I have a critique about this season... and it really, like, maybe they'll become something more important later on, but I feel like Vigilance is just a group that shows up to, like justify, like in this case, why a character's not available for the rest of the plot, or they're just there to provide an obstacle that needs to be there for whatever reason in the story progression. Like, so far, Vigilance have felt so, like, just kind of tacked on to things just to make things work, when everything else is great, but, like, they just feel very kind of, I don't know, just this basic group that just gets plugged in whenever we need, like, an interruption of some kind. And that's kind of what this is. It's just, like, they've got a sniper, and Shaw goes to get the sniper, her phone gets damaged on the way, so she can't get contacted by the team. And then Vigilance decide to not go after the janitor. They decide to just, like, go after Shaw and trap her in the building. So there's just kind of like a couple of scenes of her fighting her way out of this building, telling the main guy, like, she doesn't want to, you know, you're a terrorist, I kill terrorists, so you can try and convince me to join you to get revenge on the government, blah, 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 blah. But she's not doing it. And that's fine. But that's all it is. And, you know, there's a joke at the end where she sort of stumbles into the library all, like, cut up and bruised, like she's been through hell. And that's it. But it's really just a thinly veiled reason for her not to be around for the main story in the episode. So I'll critique it a little bit for being kind of just very serviceable from a writing perspective, just to keep her out of it. Everything else in the main story is frankly fantastic. So it's a relatively minor quibble. It's just kind of, it just feels a little clunkier than this show often is with its writing. And I feel like whenever Vigilance get involved, there's usually something clunky about it. Because they feel like a thinly veiled just plot device to keep characters away from something or provide an obstacle or whatever, like I said. So it's probably the one little thing I would ding the episode for is that. So, but hey, fun stuff. The episode ends with like a progress bar for Samaritan coming online. I'm excited to see us get towards that and like how the teams stop it, or maybe if they don't stop it, what the new status quo is when we have like an evil version of the machine online. That's exciting. So lots of stuff going on here. So over on X-Files reviews, I've started doing ratings for the episodes and bringing back the scene of the week option at the end as well. And I think I should do it for Person of Interest. I really just stopped the scene of the week because I forgot to keep doing it. It wasn't like a decision I made. So for scene of the week, I think it has to be the conversation between Finch and Root, right? What did you do to the machine? How did you damage the machine to make it care about people? No, that wasn't damage. That was like what made it work in the first place. That was the important ingredient that was missing. That exchange, the performances in that scene, just, you know, sometimes you just realize you're watching a special scene that's fundamental for the whole ongoing like story of the show. Not just from a plot mechanics perspective, because there's tons of those, arguably, but in terms of like something that really feels like something's hitting with the characters that's really important for the entire story. And this was one of those scenes, so it has to be that. There's no other option there. Rating wise, this is probably a 9. I'm tempted to dock it a little bit for the Shaw subplot feeling clunky, but ultimately I don't think it gets in the way that much. So, but it definitely keeps it from going any higher than the 9 out of 10. I think so. I'll say that. So yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on this episode of Person of Interest, and I'll be back next time with the next episode. We're getting kind of late in season 3 here. It's kind of exciting yet scary that I've got less than half the show left at this point, I think, because season 5's a shorter season. So I'm not ready to be talking about it ending. But here we are. So let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Helps me out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support the reviews and all the reviews both here and over in the movie channel, Mailfuzz Movies, where all the podcasts live. Begging over to patreon.com/MailfuzzTV and getting some bonuses for your trouble as well. So thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?